104.7 The Cave, KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Now, it's time for Ned Talk.
You would think, if you didn't know better, that it was raining outside. Was all the ice is melting out of the trees, and it's just falling all over the place. It's kind of crazy.
I had come to a stop street on the route that I take here, and when I stopped, I was under a tree. I've been in thunderstorms that were as heavy as all that ice coming down there, and big drops. Gracious sakes alive.
Welcome to Ned Talk. It is your local live weather show. No, wait, no. We don't do real. What do we talk about, Ned?
You know, that's a good question.
We talk about sports. That's what we do. At least ostensibly, that's what we talk about. I'm Joe Westen. Ned Reynolds, he is who the show is named after, is sitting next to me. How are you, sir? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you, and I hope 2021 brings all of us happiness and peace.
Kicks butt. John Oliver with us today. John, how are you?
I'm doing well. As I said, the little crackling and ice falling reminded me of 2007, unfortunately. But luckily, this is nothing like that.
Ned, you said your electricity went out for a little bit?
2:30 has about 4 hours. 2:30 a.m. on New Year's morning. I knew I was cold to begin with, but waking up and you're cold, and as you gradually wake up, why am I so cold? Am I no longer living? Is that what the case is? And then it begins to dawn on you, there ain't no power in the house.
2:30, you were just getting in about that time, weren't you?
I'm out on New Year's Eve.
All right, let's check in with Ned right away and find out who's hot in the NFL. It's brought to you by All Service Air Service.
A little bit difficult today to find out who's hot and who's not. There are teams, of course, who have to win. I think later on tonight, the Washington Ball Club will be faced with a major challenge. Playing Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not going anywhere. Washington has to win. Otherwise, the Dallas Cowboys might get in. There are just so many variables involved. But to really pinpoint a hot team on the final week of the regular season, I'll tell you, the NFL is hot. And I'll tell you why. Because there were many, not just in the NFL, but at every level of sports, many of the journalists in this country, journalists who view everything objectively like wrong, opining all the time, who said, oh, we're all going to hell. This is just not, it's a disaster for everybody. NFL's completed their season. College football completed their season. High school football completed their season. Come on, let's come up with something else now. Okay.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. Who do you have as being hot?
As far as hot in the NFL for me, man, the Green Bay Packers are something to behold this year. I've said it before. I know off the air talking to this. I don't know whether the breakup for Aaron Rodgers, with Danica Patrick factored in on his diet. Maybe he got some protein he was missing. I don't know, but he looks vintage Aaron Rodgers, if not better. And then Devontae Adams, what a year for that kid. I mean, he's missed a couple of games, and he's still, way over 1,000 yards receiving this year. They're a really fun team to watch.
Here's something that I wanted to talk about because you brought up the Dallas Cowboys. It's so sad that they have a chance to make the playoffs, as pathetic as they have played.
Well, not only them, but the New York Giants, they're under 500. The Washington Club under 500. In fact, everybody in the NFC East is under 500.
That's right.
And yet one of them will represent that division in the playoffs. And yeah, it could be any team other than Philadelphia. They're the only ones who are out of it, and they really haven't nobody to blame but themselves on that. But as far as the best team in the NFC least, I would have to think the New York Giants probably.
Really, I the Washington teams, the team that
good.
I picked. The disarray aside, I think if Alex Smith had not gotten hurt and if Dwayne Haskins hadn't been an ass, then they probably could have competed a little more and maybe have secured this before coming into the final day of the season.
In a sense, it's poetic justice in an obscure sense because Washington has been through so much. Their name is gone. They're not the Redskins anymore. Their owner has been accused of all sorts of indiscretions, and it's just been a down year. And here they are rallying at the last minute to possibly get in the playoffs and will if they beat Philadelphia. And I don't think they will, though. I think the Eagles rise up to win, but Washington could still be there. That's how disjointed that least division is.
Well, I think that speaks to the guy that's at the helm there, Ron Rivera, and he has a lot of respect in the NFL, a very good coach and a guy that's battled his own demons and been able to come back from them, and speaks a lot to him, and I think they finally may have the right leadership as far as coaching goes in spot there.
Hope so, because it's one of the iconic franchises in all the NFL, been around forever and ever, and heck, they were around when they were in Boston, for heaven's sake. So yeah, it's one of the featured teams, so to speak.
Were they called?
They were the Boston Redskins.
Okay,
I
was wondering about
Redskins, that. Right. I think George Preston Marshall, who owned the team, may have had, I must admit, I don't know this, but may have had another name to begin with, possibly the Patriots. But he changed it to Boston Redskins like about 1934, 35, somewhere in that vicinity. And that's what they were right up until they moved to Washington.
First question I have to ask you guys about last week's game is, after it was over, it was kind of like, huh. And then I listened to your favorites, the pundits, the talking heads, and Tony Gonzalez said that he felt the Chiefs are bored. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, of course, he played. We did not. So maybe it is possible that pro football teams who are of such an ilk that they are so much better than everybody else can become bored. I think it's more like a peaks and valleys situation, because all teams, period, not just pro, go through those periods when you just can't seem to do anything right at all. And then the next period, the mountain, when you're doing everything right. Baseball, football, basketball, you see it in all of them. I'm of the opinion they've just gone through one of their slumps and that they could emerge from it. I'm saying could because I know I'm a naysayer and nitpicker and all that, but I'm not a big fan of the 2 weeks off, and many of them are getting 2 weeks off. And next week, of course, is the bye week, but they're not even going to play this week. You get, I don't care who you are, you get stale if you're out of rhythm, and they will be out of their rhythm. But I also think they're good enough to win and overcome all sorts of problems.
John, what's your take on that?
My opinion about it, I don't know that it's so much boredom as, humans are creatures of habit, and I think one of the things the Chiefs have done consistently is they've always rallied from behind. So I think these last few weeks, there's been maybe a little lethargy with the team where they think, well, yeah, we're down, but we know we're going to come back, and that's it's a good confidence to have, but you can't always rely on that. Sometimes you do have to react immediately, and I think that's where you're seeing it is they just assume, well, we've come back so many times in the past, we're going to come back on this.
Atlanta Falcons, not a good football team.
Well, and having said that, and with that mindset that, yeah, we're going to come back, they should have lost that game. The Chiefs should have.
Yes, they should have.
I totally agree with that. That game should have gone to overtime. Atlanta has the most confident, or has one of the best, most accurate kickers in the NFL. He missed that extra point. There's some talk that it was wind, some talk that it was a hand. But we don't know what happened. He missed it, and the Chiefs got a gift. They won that game, and that's when things are working right for you. You get those gifts. But what I want to get your opinions on is this is the wrong time of year to kind of go into the playoffs with your offense being kind of not clicking in all cylinders.
Yeah, but I think probably, Joe, that judgment is better forthcoming after their first playoff game, which will be the second week into the season. That'll be prior to that's the divisional playoff game. Then it's the conference championship game. Then the Super Bowl. Divisional playoff game. Depending on how they play, then I will agree or disagree with what you say. But their offense really has been a little bit on the stagnant side. However, they have won the games.
Yeah, they have won the games. John, I want to get your take on especially the red zone. Mm-hmm. It seems like the Chiefs are able to drive. They get down in the 20-yard in area, and then they don't look as good. Of course, you've got that 12th man when you're in that red zone as far as defense goes with the back line. What do you think? Does that disturb you?
It does a little bit. I mean, you see the Chiefs score on big plays for the most part. They score on the 40, the 50-yard completions to Hill, to Hardman, to Watkins, to Robinson. What worries me a little bit is, especially with Hilaire possibly limited with his injury, Le'Veon Bell's performed admirably, if I can speak today. But at the same time, you haven't had those guys that can punch it in from 8 yards out. Mahomes can scramble. He's shown that. But do you want to rely on that as your first option? They've run some options with Tyreek Hill. We saw that a couple of weeks ago where he got into the end zone from not far out. I worry about the running back core and if they're going to be able to punch things in from the red zone.
That's a really good point that you do bring up, and I'm going to carry that a little bit further. We said this at the very start when they picked up Le'Veon Bell. Oh, my God, we got Le'Veon Bell. He is not the Le'Veon Bell of the past.
Not at all.
And not even close to it. I'm not sure that he can really carry the team in the absence of Edwards-Helaire. Neither one of them is likely to play today. I like the kid who will play today, the Thompson kid. He has some capabilities. A big, rough kid, probably doesn't have that mindset or that instinct of how to drive on yet. But I think he'll prove his mettle maybe in future years, assuming he is going to stay with the team. But if they're counting on Bell to carry them through, forget it, because that's not going to happen.
Well, and I'll even add, I think people forget last year in the Super Bowl. To me, that vote for Super Bowl MVP should have been a lot closer between Damian Williams and Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think you can underscore the absence of Williams this year. He was the guy that could put that ball in under 10.
And I fully concur with what you say. In fact, I'll carry it a step further. He should have been the MVP.
I agree with you, Ned. Yes.
Let's go to the other side of the ball. Let me also say this first. It's Ned Talk. I'm 104.7 The Cave. Ned Reynolds, John Oliver, myself, Joe Westen. We're talking about Chiefs football. We're talking about last week's game and our concerns, or maybe not concerns. Ned's trying to talk us down right now. I'm a little concerned right now. Ned's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't. Let's talk about the other side of the ball, because the last 3 weeks, the defense has played extremely well. What are your thoughts on that?
The defensive team is coming to the fore and playing well. I think they do show some liabilities in the backfield. And keep in mind now, they played the Saints, and the Saints are a very good football team. The Falcons, who are they legitimate? Miami had some very big games against that defensive backfield, but still they are playing well, and they do have quickness. And when you have a honey badger back there who's a tough hombre, even at age 31, and that's the problem, because he's getting banged around. The Snead kid, who is out with a broken collarbone, is playing well. I really feel like a team that's going to exploit Kansas City will exploit that defensive backfield, but this is later on in the playoffs. It obviously isn't going to happen today, but later on, if they're vulnerable, that's where it is. Or to a big running back like a Henry kid from the Tennessee Titans, somebody like that. They're playing well. Their defensive team is playing well. It does really need to play a little bit better, in my opinion.
John, your thoughts?
It's along those same lines. I mean, the secondary's young, and that's one of the main problems. Snead was playing very well before he went out. Thornhill is coming off, of course, that injury at the end of last season. There's potential there for them to be good. Breeland's always been one of those guys that I think is as a serviceable guy in the secondary, but he just sometimes misses the easy plays. And it comes down to what we talked about last week, wrapping up and tackling. We have a tendency in this era of the game to always try to punch the ball out. And I've seen time and time again, week after week, the Chiefs sometimes miss some tackles in the secondary, and it ends up costing them 10 to 15 extra yards because everybody's punching, not wrapping the guys up.
Punching and pushing. That's a big thing. I see a lot of pushing rather than trying to tackle. And I hear guys that the pundits, again, talk about the game, and they say, oh, well, you don't want to go that way because you're going to hurt yourself if you do that. But there's a reason why we were all center mass, taught to go for the middle, taught to wrap up and bring those guys down when we played football.
Exactly.
You do it.
That is exactly the way you do it. And the Chiefs are not alone in this. We're not singling them out. Most teams in the NFL are, I would say almost all of them are poor tackling teams. And we talked about this, I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago or last week with Stormy, that 49ers, one of the best tackling teams when Harbaugh was the coach of that team. And so, it's something you see throughout the NFL. It's kind of like all sports. They change more to an offensive side, so the defensive side of all sports kind of takes a back seat to everything, which is kind of sad.
It is sad.
kind of sad because you don't see Ned, when we started doing the show and talking about the Chiefs, one of the first things that you would always say was defense wins championships. There's not a team this year that you go, wow, that team's got a really good defense.
No, well, for one thing, the offenses are so sophisticated now, and your lines are so big. The defensive game has not met that kind of challenge. And furthermore, the rules of the game dictate you're going to score points. That's what the audience likes to see. So as a result, I think you're seeing a lot of the rules go against the defensive unit. No, there is no one dominant team, but I still stand by that statement that defense is what eventually does win.
Second game of the year this year was against the L.A. Chargers. I almost said San Diego. I had to stop. Where do they play at? Are they in Las Vegas? Where do they play at? But they're in L.A. They're a renter in the Rams Stadium. And that was a really good game. The Chargers really gave the Chiefs fits in that game. Today's completely different because the Chiefs want to rest and get everybody in a good spot. And I think the Chargers want to see what they got. So what do you expect from today's game?
It's really difficult to make a judgment on it because the theory is, well, the Chiefs don't really care. Well, that's probably right as far as the varsity is concerned, but not the guys who are going to be playing.
Oh, yeah.
It's what used to be known in baseball circles as the salary drive. These are guys who are in there fighting for a job next year. There'll be a bunch of players who you've never heard of before or who don't get very much playing time, and they'll want to do their best. Chad Henne was a starting quarterback in the NFL back in 2014 with Jacksonville. He can play. He's a Michigan guy. My gosh, he's been around the NFL long enough to have absorbed some of the subtleties of the game. As far as his receiving crew, it'll be spotty at the very best. But I do think you're going to see a pretty good performance from Kansas City. It's going to be an inspired one. The Chargers are also sitting some of their people. It's the last game of the season, so why risk any further injury? Joey Bosa's not going to be in there to play. Just that's one. But Herbert will be, and Herbert is a pretty doggone good quarterback. I think he has shown himself. His first game was against the Chiefs.
That's right.
Make no mistake in what I'm saying. I do believe you're going to see a lot of effort from guys today. I don't think the Chiefs are going to fold it up. I think they want to go 15-1. What do you expect to see, John?
Well, I mean, you've got to remember this would be a franchise record 11th win in a row if they get it. So, I mean, there's got to be some motivation there. You hit it on the nose. Herbert, his coming out party was against the Chiefs back in week 2. He is a very good quarterback. He's going to be here to stay for a while. As Ned alluded to, though, just like the Chiefs, the Chargers are setting quite a few guys. When I get to the injury report later, Hunter Henry's not going to be there. Keenan Allen's not going to be there. There aren't many weapons for Herbert to throw to. So this has the potential to be what I'd call a clunky game. You may see some dropped passes. You may see some broken routes. And I think this one today is going to be particularly low scoring, if I had my druthers.
Oh, we said high scoring last week because the Falcons had a good offense, but Chiefs defense held them down, and then Falcons defense held the Chiefs down. I don't know if the Falcons defense held the Chiefs down or if the Chiefs held.
I think it's more the Chiefs holding themselves down.
Exactly.
And that's why Gonzalez would have said the things that he did about the motivation factor, and that's a pretty good assessment. And you have to give him credibility here because he did play. He would know the mindset of these guys. You want to ideally think that these are pro athletes. They're out there giving it their all every time. Come on. Let's not be Pollyannas about this.
He was pointing to the play when they were on the goal line when all the offensive linemen turned. That particular play was the one he was like, that's just pure boredom right there.
Could be.
All right, we'll join the Chiefs pregame in about 41 minutes. You're listening to Ned Talk. We are on 104.7 The Cave.
Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network.
Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, John Oliver talking some sports today, and it is that time once again for us to check in with Ned. He's going to tell us about what's going on in college football, what's brewing in college football, and it's brought to you by Arctic Food Equipment. First, before we get into that, Ned, well, Ohio State, I guess they had something to say. Huh? What do you think?
I know you won't remember it because you don't remember anything I say, but last week we said if an upset was going to happen in the playoffs, it would be in the Ohio State-Clemson game. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't call that an upset at all. Ohio State was clearly the better team playing that game. I want to talk to you a little bit about college football, though, and we alluded to this in the first comments that I made. At the start of this year, you know, you had the big upset with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 deciding not to play. And the journalists, it was the right decision to bow out. Wait a minute. Who said the right decision? The journalists did. Nobody else said it was the right one. They felt like they had to make it, so I guess whatever. But the other three of the Power Five decided to play. Mm-hmm. And what did the Big Ten and the Pac-12 do? Saw that they were looking in from the outside, and they'd better do something about it because you can see the dollar signs moving away. So they decided to play after all. And how did the journalists treat that? The one of them, and I will not make reference to name or gender, said, darkest day in the history of the Big 12 or Big 10 conference. Darkest day. Ruining everything. It's a shambles, blah, 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 and so forth and so on. Fast forward, and it's a Big Ten team playing for the national championship. Thank you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the bowl games.
But do they deserve to play for the national championship?
They're there, aren't they? Yeah. And they beat Clemson.
They did. They beat Clemson, but
they beat them big.
They played 6 games.
Yep.
Well, still, they won them all.
Right.
I think they should be there. Now,
if they played one game, Ohio State would have been in the championships.
Well, they are Ohio State, too. But over and above that, they are a very good football team. Are they in the neighborhood of Alabama? No. I don't. In my opinion, they are not. But that's next week. We'll talk more about that. The conference that took the biggest hit of all is the Atlantic Coast Conference that goes 0-6. Ooh. 6 bowl games. All of them lost by the ACC teams. Keep in mind now, Notre Dame played ACC this year for this year only. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that they lost all of them, including last night's Orange Bowl game when Texas A&M came from behind to run North Carolina right out of the ballpark.
They did.
So there are interesting facets along those lines. But the bottom line is that college football was the winner for the most part. You knew there were going to be hiccups. Mm-hmm. There had to be. Under the protocol, as rigid as some of the standards were that had to be followed, you knew people were going to bow out. You knew teams would have to cancel out and games would have to be postponed. You knew it was going to happen. But to go through it and get it done and complete it with success, and it will be completed Monday night a week, my hat's off to them. Not only college, but the NFL and high school as well. But Atlantic Coast Conference, not a very good bowl performance. Good bowl games, yes, there were some very good ones. I thought that Alabama took their foot off the pedal against Notre Dame. They could have beaten them a whole lot more. The game that really disappointed me, and guys, please understand, I'm no Pollyanna. I played this game myself. I know how athletics, how they react and how they feel and who's involved and who's not involved. But the way that one game ended, the Tulsa, Mississippi State game is completely out of any kind of propriety that anybody should ever go through. That's the worst fight I've ever seen.
It was awful.
It was absolutely the worst. It was a gang brawl. You had guys kicking other guys in the head and then running from them. I was terribly disappointed in both schools. Mississippi State has Mike Leach. Come on. His record's not very good anyway. Yeah. Oh. But Tulsa, come on. Tulsa to be involved in something like that, I was very surprised and very disappointed.
A lot of passion in college football, and then sometimes that spills over. A lot of passion in sports, period, and you see that just spill over into what people do.
But Joe, that's just it. Sure, it's great to play with the passion. That's part of it. But you also learn to control your emotions.
Correct. Oh, come on. You are being a Pollyanna now, because how long have fights been a part of sports? Forever.
Not well, fights maybe. One-on-one, but not a gang brawl that we saw in this one.
You know, baseball's always been kind of game.
No, that's pushing. They don't ever,
Right.
So what do you think? I mean, Ohio State's in. They tore up Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
That quarterback for Ohio State, I'm sorry, I don't know his
Justin
name.
Fields.
Wow. He's got an arm.
Well,
Yes,
now
he does.
he's a great All-America, and he's the guy who replaced Mitch Haskins there. And he can play, and everybody knew he could play. He's also, I believe, was a red shirt. This guy is a very good quarterback. He also took a monstrous hit in the ribs and came out. I thought his ribs were broken, but
Yeah, that was a gutty performance. I saw him he took that huge hit, and then you could see that he was in pain. The only time he didn't seem in pain was when he was throwing rockets. I mean, he was throwing missiles down the field.
and he can throw. Now, they play Alabama and Ohio State play next Monday night in Miami. No, I'm wrong on that. Yeah, no, it's Hard Rock Stadium. Miami is where they're playing. I look for Ohio State to score. They will put points on the board. I do not look for them to stop Alabama. Alabama is so fast, so quick, and when they are motivated, they're awful tough to beat. Awfully tough.
You're going to have to play the Josh Roberts, Stormy Davis role for
Sure.
us. Be the Alabama fan, Alabama booster for us.
I absolutely can be.
Do you think they're going to win the national championship?
I'd be shocked if they don't. I mean, Mac Jones is a very, very good quarterback. Ned and I were discussing this off the air. He's a super intelligent kid. Already has, I believe, his master's degree.
Wow.
I mean, just
And he's a junior.
yeah, and he's a junior at this point. And then we were looking this up. I believe the last wide receiver to win the Heisman Award was Desmond Howard back in 1991 for Michigan. That's going to change this year. So Devontae Smith is going to win the Heisman as a wide receiver. So quick, so explosive. I am very anxious to see what this kid does in the pros. This is a very polished Alabama offense.
He reminds me a lot of Jerry Rice.
Yes.
He isn't as big as Jerry Rice, and not height wise, but I'm talking about bulky. But oh my goodness, can he fly? You see him run those crossing patterns, and the defenders can't keep up with him.
No.
He is just so fast. But he's just one. That's the Alabama mantra. They are so quick in every single respect. Defense. I was telling John earlier, you watch how they play defense. The linebackers, the safeties, they're all rushing to that football, and they are there to stop those plays right at the line of scrimmage. That doesn't happen with every team at all. They're really good.
Not
I
at
like
all.
them.
I blame Trevor Lawrence's mustache. I think that's what I honestly think that's what called
That's
him
where the
given.
blame's falling, according to
Yeah.
the memes I've seen today.
It is that 13-year-old boy mustache. It didn't look very good on him. He's got that dreamy hair though.
Yeah.
Why would he do that? So, any more bowl games? Talk about anything that you want to?
The bowl games are all done. Now, you'll have several all-star games. You'll have the East-West. I'm assuming they play that one. And then the Pro Bowl all-star game will be coming up after the not Pro Bowl, but the what do they call that? Oh, gosh, Senior Bowl.
Senior
Bowl game, not
Yep.
Pro Bowl. Senior Bowl in Mobile. That'll come up after the Alabama-Ohio State game, probably that weekend after. But But we are approaching a different era, guys. Because I do a little blog, and I'm pointing this out on my blog, too. The spring football season starts. This is for the FCS and Division II teams. Division III dropped all of football for this year, but Division II did not, and FCS or 1AA did not. And the Bears will kick off their season on February 20th in Grand Forks, North Dakota, against the University of North Dakota, which is this is their first game as the Missouri Valley Conference team. This is extremely interesting. Now you're saying in Grand Forks, well, relax, they do play indoors up there. In February, that's brutal. It's got to be. But I'm really anxious to see how the football manifests itself in the spring in regards to what they do in the future. Because you're talking about the 1AAs and the Division II. Is it possible that they may choose? I don't think so, but there could be some thought process about doing this permanently.
What's your thought on Heisman Trophy? Do you agree with John?
Heavens, yes, sure. Devontae Smith, he's without question the best player. There, of course, you have the Trask kid from Florida, and you'll have Mac Jones in there from Alabama. But these guys are QBs, and while they're very good QBs, you have to understand that Smith is head and shoulders, and I don't mean that in literally a physical standpoint, but he's really a top-notch player.
Giants are beating the Cowboys right now, 20-6. So it's tough for all you Cowboy fans out there.
Is.
Really,
I'm
really,
telling
really
you, the
tough.
Giants, if they get in, if Philadelphia beats Washington tonight, and the Giants win this game, watch out.
Exactly. We're about 26 minutes away from the start of the pregame show. You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network.
Mics are live, guys. We are on the air. Never know what these guys are going to say. They just get crazy in the studio. Joe Westen, John Oliver, Ned Reynolds discussing sports on live microphones.
It was
And
Joe Namath. We were keeping it sports related.
were you? Sure you were.
We were.
He's talking about Medicare.
He's doing Medicare supplement commercials and all of his used car salesman glory.
Thank you, Ned, by the way, for the muffins. Ned brought me muffins today. I want to say thanks. Thank you for that. Thunder muffins.
Out of this world.
I think I dated a girl in high school we called Thunder Muffins.
Oh, my God.
I don't know.
Guys, come
I don't know if I should have said
on.
that or not. Okay. All right. Let's get back to sports here before I lose my job. It is the injury report brought to you by Morrison, Webster, and Carlton.
Oh, boy, the injury report is extensive today, so I'll go through this fairly quickly. For the Chiefs, Le'Veon Bell is questionable with a knee. I'd be surprised if he plays, honestly, at this point. Derek Nottie is questionable with a knee as well. Ben Neiman is out with a hamstring. Mike Rimmers is out with a back issue. Of course, Edwards-Helaire is out with an ankle. Sammy Watkins out with a calf injury. Tyreek Hill out with a hamstring injury. And Anthony Hitchens, the linebacker, is on the COVID reserve list. On the other side of the ball, Jahiel Ade, the safety, is out with a calf injury. Brian Bulaga, the offensive tackle, out with a foot injury. Rayshawn Jenkins, the safety, out with an ankle injury. Casey Hayward Jr., the cornerback, out with a hamstring. Malik Jefferson, their linebacker, out with a shoulder injury. Hunter Henry is out, the tight end we talked about earlier, on the COVID reserve list. Joey Bosa is out with what they're calling a concussion, and Keenan Allen is out with a hamstring issue.
Do they have any receivers left now?
Right.
And that's it for the show.
Right.
John's taking up all our time. Some of those, are just minor injuries because they're just trying to keep guys.
Absolutely.
Get them better. Sammy Watkins is always a little bit banged up. And then we've seen the with Tyreek that he gets a lot of cramps. And that's he'll look like Tyreek's pulled up again and grabs it, and then he's back out there the next play running. So I don't think read too much into the injury report this week for the Chiefs.
A lot of resting in week 17.
No, and that's precisely what they're doing is resting these guys. Hill, and you're right, he does have those cramping problems. To that end, there was the report I saw the other day of how he is remedying that, and he's drinking pickle juice.
Wow. That's a play out of the old playbook.
Oh, it is.
Free Gatorade.
It is.
Yep.
That's exact, and it's the same effect. Apparently, it would give I would assume, the saline balance in your system to the point where you're not going to, or at least it's going to be limited anyway. But oh gracious,
it cures hiccups too. By the way, just thought I'd let you know that. Yeah. Well, my wife always says drink some pickle juice, and I'm like, no, I don't think I'll do that. Let's get your fantasy pick for the week. That is brought to you by Fazoli's.
So for fantasy, most leagues, if not all leagues, are over. I finished 4th in my league.
Congratulations! How many teams were in your league?
There were 12 in my league.
Okay, so that's a show.
It was a pretty big upset because I did my usual, which is a fantasy player's chagrin, is I forgot to log in until they were in the 5th round, so the computer auto-picked some people for me. So I did pretty well. But what I want to focus on is really the fantasy darlings this year. A few guys, Derrick Henry, what a season. I mean, again, next year I don't see any slough off coming from him. So I see him going high in leagues next year. Devontae Adams had a phenomenal season for the Green Bay Packers, even missing the games. Calvin Ridley, I hate to say I told you so, but I will. I picked him early on in week 1 as somebody to watch for the year. He's been superb for the Falcons. Not a very good football team, but he had a great season. And I do want to highlight our own Travis Kelce. What a season as a tight end. Over 1,400 yards. He's got to be your go-to tight end next year if you've got a chance to draft him in your league.
Oh, and it's sort of a dark horse if you want to look at somebody, a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes. Well, he puts up some numbers.
We assume that guy's going to be taken. I try to give people some other low-hanging fruit.
So let me get your opinion on this before we go back. I'll get Ned's opinion in just a second. A lot of young quarterbacks in the NFL. Kyler Murray, Tua with the Dolphins. Josh Allen. Who do you think's the quarterback to watch next year, fantasy-wise?
Next year, fantasy-wise, honestly, I think Tua is going to be the one to watch. I saw a lot of maturity from him this year. I never knew he was such a good thrower.
I am going to say Herbert from the Chargers. Because he will have a whole bevy of receivers in there who are very good. He's already proven himself. He comes in a clutch when Tyrod Taylor is unable to play. Takes the Chiefs into overtime with his game plan, and since now they've won, I think it's the last 3 in a row. They've had an up and down. They're really not a great team, and I think Anthony Lynn is probably going to get canned. I hope that doesn't happen because I like the guy. I think he's a good coach, but it's win or not, and they're not winning. But Herbert is a good QB, and I think he's going to have a really breakout year next season.
I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. Because I think he's played extremely well at the end of the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. That was throwing you up a softball there.
Well, I would agree with that, except that Philadelphia's offensive line is mismatch. It is not very good at all.
Yeah, he's a guy that can get out of the pocket, though, create things on his own, sort of like Patrick Mahomes. But he's having to be more creative than Patrick does. So, I know him. We're friends. I called Patrick earlier today, and we said, hey, what are you doing? Mr. Mahomes. He's kind of similar that way. Jalen Hurts plays football. Just creative. He's been fun to watch these last couple of weeks. Where do you see Carson Wentz going?
If he goes anywhere, I would think he will go to a team maybe just to say this, maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars if they don't get their right man on and I'm sure they will, but he could be a good teacher for a guy like Trevor Lawrence. Or Wentz could end up with as a backup on the Rams or the Chargers, somebody like that. Chicago Bears, hey, that's a possibility. That's if he wants to leave Philadelphia, and I'm not sure he does. He doesn't want to be a backup, but keep in mind, this is all going to be all taken care of in the training camp next year. And here's the curious factor. Tagovailoa, who you were talking about, Hurts, Mac Jones, all these guys, where did they play their college football?
Exactly.
Bama. Come on.
Alabama. I did see a report this morning on on Carson Wentz that said he feels the relationship with Doug Peterson is irreparable. So the Colts are apparently very interested, so I would not be surprised to see him move.
Well, wait.
Phillip Rivers is probably out. It's probably his last game today.
Oh, really? He's not going to play? He's going to retire?
Well, it's a debatable point at the moment. It'll be up to him.
What about Jacoby Brissett there, though? He played extremely well a couple of years ago, and then
he did.
He's kind of fallen off the table now.
Yeah, but isn't that the case with Wentz as well? Extremely good, and then kind of falling off a little bit?
Let's say this in Carson Wentz's defense, that team has no offensive line.
Oh, no.
And he's a pocket passer. He's got to stand back and have time to throw. So if he's put with the team that can protect him, say New England, maybe Minnesota, that can actually protect him, he can win some games for those teams.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that I don't think Carson Wentz is washed up by any stretch of the imagination.
No. And he wouldn't be this year if he'd had any kind of protection at all.
But you know how the NFL is, damaged fruit. It's just like, you're not going to pick that one because, well, he didn't play very well. And even though these guys know all this information, exactly what we're saying, that Philadelphia has no offensive line whatsoever, they will still look at him with a very jaundiced eye.
Yes, they will.
So, and the guy that I always point to with this is Tim Tebow. Takes a team to the playoffs, and then out of the NFL.
I agree completely, Joe. I think that's a case in point.
I mean, and then you look at teams right now that are tailoring their offense to younger players who do similar things. Now, most of them have better throwing styles and better arms than Tim Tebow has, but you go with just not giving it enough chance there. Maybe in this new startup league. Maybe, did you hear about this other new startup league?
I did, unfortunately.
Have you heard about it with Johnny Manziel?
No, I have not.
Yeah, the fans get to call the plays.
Oh, isn't that one of the deals in the old league that went under? Weren't the fans calling the plays?
XFL?
No.
I don't know that they ever got to call the plays, but, I mean, this is every play is called by the fans.
But the XFL's not done, though, are they completely?
No, actually, Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, The Rock owns that now.
But they're not coming back till next year, I think.
It'll be the year,
But this other new league, do you know what it's called at all?
I forget the name. I did see it, but I don't remember the name.
I have to look that up because it's going to be. We need to talk about
it. May not
that's
exist
something.
long, Ned.
That's nothing. That's something we have to talk about. All right, we're 12 minutes away from pregame with Mitch Holtis and Art Haynes. It's Ned Talk 104.7 The Cave.
Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Weather in KC, 35 right now. Under some cloudy skies, so good day to rest. Good day to be on the bench, wearing your jacket. Don't you think?
I wonder how many of those guys who are resting, well, they'll all be there. They will be. I would suspect that Mahomes and Hill and those people will not be in uniform. They'll be in civilian clothes. I'm guessing this, especially if they've been placed on the inactive list, and I'm sure Mahomes has been. But, yeah, there's no reason for them to even have a uniform on.
All right, this new league, we've looked it up. We've got information for you just so that you know. The Glacier Boys, with a Z at the end of it.
Oh, good. Better.
Yep. Zappers. Which
that
might possibly be the worst name ever. The Zappers.
So the Glacier Boys has a Z and the Zappers has a Z.
Yes, they have two Z teams, and then there's the Wild. They're just Beasts. Marshawn Lynch is part of that organization. Richard Sherman's part of the Glacier Boys. Trevor May is part of the Zappers, and then finally, it is the Wild Aces. It does not say what city any of these teams are playing for. And they've also made it very clear on their website, and Ned, I want you to pay attention to this, no bandwagon fans.
That's right.
If this thing takes off, they don't want you to jump on late. They want you on now. Get on. You need to help draft and choose plays.
What's the league called again?
The Fan-Controlled Football League, the FCF.
Okay, attention FCF. Don't count on Ned Reynolds being a bandwagon fan.
I thought you were a football fan, man.
Not of this.
You don't want to call plays?
No.
Really?
No.
I'd say I just call the bomb every play.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen.
I would just write Joe Montana in Joe Montana football. That
gosh.
Could run that fly pattern down the line every time. And
Tecmo Bowl. It was Doug Williams to Gary Clark for me every single play.
Exactly. That's what this is going to be. Back to reality. We've been way off track today. I've been way off track today. Let's put it that way. What do you think is going to happen in the game today?
I think you'll see the Chiefs win. There is much conjecture that they don't care. Well, no, the ones who don't care aren't playing. The ones who will be out there do care. This is a game to impress individuals. I don't think there's any getting around the fact that it will be tantamount to a preseason game, an exhibition game. But I do think Kansas City wins. And I'm picking as the key individual, Chad Henne. The guy's 36 years old. Mm-hmm. He's absorbed all of the subtleties of an NFL team and game plan, and was a starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars many years ago. He can get it done, and while he may not have the weapons that he normally would in this situation, I do think Kansas City gets a victory, probably a relatively low-scoring game, although I did see a pundit this morning picked the final score to be 69-14.
Oh,
Chiefs.
my gosh.
Wow.
No way.
No. The Chiefs?
Mm-hmm.
Who did that?
A pundit.
You don't want to say?
Well, quite frankly, forgot his name. It was an easily forgettable name, but yeah,
okay.
It was
Colin Cowherd.
No. This is one of the Chiefs' cadre of followers who they have.
Oh, okay.
I will say the final score is going to be the Chiefs 23 and the Chargers 20, somewhere around there.
John, what do you think?
I also think this is going to be low scoring. I mentioned that earlier. Chad Henne is a good quarterback. I mean, one thing you have to remember with the Chiefs are even with the starters out, they have some pretty good players that would probably be starters on other teams. Byron Pringle's a good example of that. You've still got Hardman playing today. You've got just a lot of talent. I think Darwin Thompson's going to be playing today, the running back. There's guys that are going to want to make a statement in this last game, so I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk necessarily. I'm going to go 17-14. I do think it'll be close, but I do think the Chiefs will win.
You're 100% on the money. Byron Pringle and Nicole Hardeman, they would start from a lot of other teams, but they sit behind Sammy Watkins and
That's right.
Tyreek Hill. And there's some thought that Hardeman may actually be as fast, if not faster, than Tyreek Hill. I know they raced in the preseason.
They did race in the preseason, but I think Hardman's smart enough to know that you don't beat Tyreek Hill in a foot race. I honestly think he is a little faster.
Well, so I'm going to agree with Ned. I'm going to go with Chad Henne has a big day today, and the Chiefs are going to take care of business. It's going to be a very business-like sort of game for them, and I'm going to go 21-10.
Nice.
I'll give a little further on the spread. So what are the options for the Chiefs in this? I mean, there's so many permutations of this. Who's the possible teams the Chiefs could play?
I must admit, I don't know what the breakdown. It hasn't really been decided yet because there are some variables as to who's going to be where and what. But I do know it'll be January 16th or 17th, 16th or 17th when they play again. And that'll be the divisional championship. Right now, just as a ballpark guess, I would have the Chiefs playing. Just out of games that I have seen this year, Chiefs and Buffalo is who I would see again.
Wow.
But who knows? But who knows where it's going to end up?
There's a lot of people feel like that's the AFC championship right there.
Chiefs Buffalo?
Yeah,
Definitely
because Buffalo's been the team everybody's been talking about. They've become favorites for a lot of people, but, you know.
For big disappointments, it's the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
absolutely. Been a disappointing this season for them, but dangerous team to play in the playoffs. I wouldn't want to come up against them.
There are two teams who I think the Chiefs really view with a great hesitancy. One, certainly Buffalo. I think then the Tennessee Titans and the Baltimore Ravens. I think they would be very, very dangerous teams to play.
Well, even Cleveland. I think Cleveland could do some stuff. They're inconsistent, but if you caught them on the wrong day.
Yeah.
But, Joe, this will be when the Browns get in. It's their first time in, 13 years, something like that they've been to the playoffs. And they're young. I'm not quite sure they're ready for that level. And besides, the games would have to be played in Kansas City anyway, assuming that would be the matchup. Right. There are any number of possibilities.
Happy New Year, Ned.
Thank you, sir, and to you.
John, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Good
That's
grief.
easy for you to say.
I know.
Pregame show starts in 45 seconds right here on 104.7 The Cave. I'm Joe Westen. I want to say thanks to Nick Fury, Mike the intern, Corbin Campbell, Scott Meyer, Renee Kinder back at home. I will see you guys, we'll see you in 2 weeks for Ned Talk right here on 104.7 The Cave.